You're listening to Consulting Logistics, presented by Aborn and Company. I'm your host, Kyle McNaught. Thanks for checking us out. In this episode, I will chat with Dr. Ednilson Bernardes. Dr. Bernardes is a professor and coordinator of the Global Supply Chain Management Program at West Virginia University. He's an expert in process transformation and supply networks innovation. He's also one of the authors of the recently released book, Digital Supply Networks. Traditionally, supply chains have been conceived and managed as a discrete sequence of activities, from design, plan, and source to make, deliver, and return. This linear model creates silos of information inside an organization and across its supply network. Piecing together the relevant information for decision makers consumes a tremendous amount of time and effort. The contemporary market reality, shaped after the Amazon effect, had rendered the traditional supply chain operating model inadequate. Disruptive crises such as COVID-19 has further highlighted the limitations of a conventional model and accelerated the shift to digitally enabled model, the digital supply network. In this conversation, Dr. Bernardes and I will discuss the roles of data and technology that they play in our current lives, the differences between supply chain management and a digital supply network, and finally, the dynamics of a digital supply network. Dr. Bernardes, how's it going?
Hi, Kyle. Doing great here. It's a great pleasure to be with you and to address you and your audience.
We're so happy to have you here. I can't wait to really dive into this. I got the book last week. I read it quickly. It was awesome. I loved everything. There's so much I could say how great the book was. But really quickly, before we jump into that stuff, tell the audience a little bit about yourself, kind of your background, how long you've been in the supply chain, and what you're doing over at West Virginia.
Oh, well, I started my career with the Air Force in Brazil, back in Brazil. And I went to an Air Force college, graduated in the Air Force college, and that was my first career. And from there, I moved to the aerospace industry, where I had the opportunity to work in all aspects of global supply chain management, and also in a very highly innovative environment. And then I continued. I moved my career towards the academia. And upon graduation, I started my first job in Georgia. And then I was hired by West Virginia University back in 2013 to start a global supply chain management program. And even though it's a very young program, it has achieved several remarkable outcomes, and our students are doing great stuff out there. And we're now moving towards the next stage in this program.
Oh, and that next stage is going to be fun. The Digital Supply Network. Like I said, I loved this book. It was great. And I really loved I want to start off with this one quote that I had that was in it that I really loved, which was, our goal is not to make you a data scientist through this coverage, but to help you understand, appreciate, and use data and technology for digital transformation in your organization. I find that it's a huge misconception that a lot of people struggle with when it comes to the role data should be playing in their job. Can you help explain the difference between a data scientist and someone who's just using data in their job?
That's an excellent question. So let me start saying that data scientists play a crucial role in the modern organizations and in the world of digital supply networks. A data scientist is a professional that typically holds an advanced degree and possesses high technical skills used to collect and structure data, to develop analytical applications, build models, build algorithms. In a nutshell, they are trained scientists. They're not individuals in the day-to-day business operation, and nor leaders devising the vision or the strategy of the organization. So we can see the leaders and people running the daily work as recipients or consumers of data science. Now, here is what I think is a funny and insightful quote. It's not mine. I'm borrowing from some place where I came across this quote that I think captures this issue. So you don't need to become a winemaker to become a wine connoisseur. So I think that captures nicely this distinction here. So you also don't necessarily need to be a data scientist to leverage the power of the technology. Now, that said, you do need to have an awareness of what types of tools make sense for particular problems, the capabilities of the technology, their limitations, because without that awareness, you won't be able to take advantage of them in the context of your specific needs.
That's yeah. I mean, that's perfect. That's exactly what when I think of it, that's what I am thinking of is the idea that it's you need to just kind of be aware these tools live out there. Otherwise, you're sitting there saying like that's impossible. So having an appreciation, you can understand some of the stuff that the book's going to dive into, which is kind of that what makes it so much fun.
Absolutely, and I would say that maybe the main issue really is how um, innovatively or how enterprisingly you leverage these resources, and also whether you use them to develop new and better ways to operate and create value. I think that is what digital supply networks are all about.
Yeah, so let's talk about a little bit because the audience of mine is mainly made up of supply chain professionals and people who've kind of been living in that world. So supply chain management is something that they know. Like that's what they cut their teeth in. So in the book, you guys outline how the two are different: a supply chain management and a digital supply network. But for this show, can you give a quick little breakdown of the differences? Most probably think of supply chain management as a highly digital operation at this point. So where does a digital supply network differ?
That's another very good question, and I think we get this question quite frequently. So the traditional supply chain management is conceived as a sequence of processes and activities, from design to source to make, distribute, return, and increasingly recycling. That's another new process, right? So it's this model, this traditional model, it's very linear, it's and sequential in nature. It encompasses a plethora of siloed information systems across functional areas and locations holding the information that ultimately contain multiple versions of the truth. So this is how I would perhaps characterize our traditional supply chain. Now, a digital supply network is an integrated set of digitally enabled supply chain capabilities powered by um, interconnected flows of information. So I'll call it a model, a GSM model. It integrates information from many sources and locations to drive the physical act of production and distribution. So it enables the management of data and data analytics following an enterprise approach to ensure that no process or function is optimized at the expense of another, unless, of course, that has some reasoning behind it, strategic reasoning. It makes data and analysis available broadly through the system, and it enables a single version of the truth. So even though supply chain operations are highly automated already, and we have been investing on these new systems and integration for decades now, but they are still siloed. So it's very frequent and common for us, and we saw this playing out right now during COVID-19, where all of a sudden a lot of companies and most companies realize that they don't have full visibility into their supply network, and that they don't have the information that they need to make the decisions that they need to make quickly. So we saw the development of um, innovative war rooms. So to piece together this information that is distributed throughout the organization and also throughout the network. So the DSN really it focuses on real-time analytics and at the point of decision or at the point of action. Does that clarifies a little bit?
That makes so much sense. And I think like not only the real world, I mean, COVID-19, right? But that idea of this single source of truth, I think it spoke volumes to me, especially reading it, uh, because you have that. You have different disparaging systems that kind of have their version of what the truth is, but a digital supply network really has that one single version of what's true because it's dissimulating everything that's out there and putting it into this one area. So I think you speak to it with the crises like COVID, but also I think one of the biggest differences you said kind of in the book about supply chain management versus a digital supply network really came down to the customer and the view of the customer. So can you speak to the challenges a traditional supply chain management model has with customer service compared to a DSN?
Oh, sure. So in a traditional supply chain, so the design, plan, source, deliver sequence, customers, they're mostly passive entities located at the end of the chain. And the customer services focuses on the deliver aspect of the design, plan, source, make, and deliver, and also in product availability. So the first challenge, and there are many challenges. We can talk about this for hours, but uh, perhaps the first challenge is how the traditional model approaches customer service from a customer segment by segmenting customers into mass groupings that assume uniformity. So in a GSN, customers they're actively connected to the network, and the customer service is more customized and also faster. So uh, customers they're not the passive buyers of products at the end of the chain as it is in the traditional model, but instead they are active partners throughout the life cycle of the product. So it provides for continuous interaction and enables intimacy and responsiveness that the traditional model cannot match. So DSN provides a streamlined and unified experience across all channels of communication with the organization. And I think all of us have experienced at one point or another um, calling a customer center and then being transferred multiple times. And then sometimes you have to start describing the issue or the problem all over again. It's quite frustrating. So the traditional model has these limitations and difficulties. The GSN, by the other side, it allows customer involvement all the way from product design throughout the different stages. And a customer expects that the same level of service across all channels, as I mentioned a minute ago. So it is challenging for an organization operating traditional supply chain processes to provide the same experience across all channels. And I would say also that handling customer issues is always a pain point for organizations operating under a conventional model. And again, I think all of us can think for a moment and come up with at least one example of one of these bad experiences. So they typically involve the interaction with multiple areas of the business, and neither of which have a full picture of how we are interacting with them. A DSN, by the other side, it enables a holistic customer interaction and also personalization. So the customer experience must align and unify across internal functional areas and business units. And this, we can achieve that with a digital supply network.
You know what's so funny is we're even seeing that whole idea of the customer experience mattering during a disruption like COVID. A lot of what I've been reading, a lot of what I've been talking about with people is that idea that like the customer service was one of the most important things as a company. If you weren't servicing your customer, if they understood that it was going to be hard to fulfill their orders, due to this pandemic we were all living in. But if you were just ignoring it and not speaking to them about this, they were livid. And it was kind of interesting. It's just reading it in the book. And I think it's sort of something you hit on a little bit earlier, but talk about how with COVID-19 and the coronavirus, how a DSN accounts for a disruptive crisis like that.
Yeah, you're raising some really great points. I think a great example in the business to consumer environment that should be familiar to most of us is Amazon deliveries during the pandemic. And sometimes I even say that mentioning Amazon in the context of digital supply networks is almost like a cheap shot because they are pushing the envelope on that. But then again, it's an example that I think all of us can relate to, right? So in the middle of all the challenges and uncertainties in the market during the initial stages of the spread of the disease, we as customers, we could still know if and when something would be available. And of course, they took some decisions in the very beginning. There was a lot of uncertainty, but they were able to do that. And they were able to do that because they had visibility and they have the means to do that. So a digital supply network provides this visibility and provides transparency of issues, allows professionals, the organizations to see inventory, how much and where they are located, and allows also visibility in the supply network to support real-time or near real-time decisions. And it also helps agility and flexibility, which I think are two really big takeaways from this health crisis. So it helps organizations to be agile and flexible, to build agility and flexible capabilities, and this to accommodate rapid changes in the market, as we saw as the pandemic evolved. We had all kinds of different issues happening at different stages that required companies to very quickly adapt. And we can see in the market still, some of them did so very well, some of them with more difficulty, and some of them were not able to do anything at all. I mean, they were really laggards in the process. So by their interlinked global nature, we can see that global supply chains have become increasingly vulnerable to a range of risks, and COVID highlighted many of them, right? So we started seeing that we have a lot of potential points of failures, and also the margin for error and to absorb delays and disruptions are become very thin when you operate the global supply chains that we operate currently. So COVID illustrates the need for transparency, visibility, agility, and all of this to support resilience. I think we are hearing a lot about resilience, right? One of the big takeaways from this crisis. And that digital supply networks enable this end-to-end visibility. It enables collaboration, responsiveness, agility, and optimization across the end-to-end supply chain. So we can anticipate disruptions and even reconfigure operations appropriately to mitigate the impact of this crisis. And it's very important to think that COVID was sort of an eye opener, right? Because it's not the first, it's very likely not the last. And we're not talking about only viruses, health crisis. Certainly, it's very likely that we will have others, but there are all kinds of other issues happening in the world. So a digital supply network allows more visibility, allows this ability to reconfigure faster to deal with the impacts of crisis.
We're talking with Dr. Ednilson Bernardes, author of Digital Supply Networks. The book's out right now, so if you want it, go out, search your favorite book owner, any place you can find it. It's all right there. It's a great read, especially because I think it's it's right there, perfect. It's awesome. It's an easy read too. There's a ton of stuff that you guys did in it that I really like. As someone who reads a ton of these business type books, I loved sort of your approach to explaining a lot of stuff. So really, really can't recommend it enough. But let's talk a little bit about, let's dive into sort of the dynamics in the books. Now, mainly our audience is logistics, fulfillment, operation side of business. So what do you envision a logistics and fulfillment operation looking like in a DSN?
Oh, that's a really good question. So I think it's very exciting. What we are starting to see this already, but I think the future is very exciting. So I envision logistics and fulfillment operations more dynamic. So we have in the book we actually talk about this. We have a whole chapter to talk about dynamic fulfillment. So becoming really more dynamic. So consisting of advanced worker solutions, item tracking and visibility, autonomous, augmented and connected processes and planning, and the ability to collaborate in real time. And I want to emphasize the word augmented because it's really not about replacing workers, but it's about augmenting their capabilities, augmenting their what makes us humans. So I think this is one of the very nice things about all this transformation that we're seeing. But coming back here to the question, so I believe that this is undoubtedly where the industry is headed. So this more dynamic environment. And the distribution center and logistics operations will enable sensing what customers will need and making real-time adjustments across the digital supply network nodes to accommodate demand signals and best deliver a seamless customer experience. So we see even now during the pandemic, we see several companies leveraging their investments to achieve just that. But we are still not quite there in terms of the potential. I think there is much more that we will see. So we really we should see more automated and autonomous processes. And in some cases, we might even start viewing lights out operations like in manufacturing. Of course, there are several processes in logistics and fulfillment operations that we are currently unable to replace humans with machines. But I think as we continue progressing, we will see more and more humans working side by side with the technology. So it's very exciting. And in the book, we discuss 6 attributes. We call them 6 attributes of this dynamic fulfillment. So we talk about ecosystem signaling, network traceability, smart delivery, and the smart distribution, and the omni-channel capabilities.
What about, so help my listeners kind of understand what role, like augmentation, but if they're working in logistics and kind of fulfillment right now, what would be that new role? What's some skill sets that they should kind of be thinking about as DSN becomes more of the new norm?
Oh, that's a great question. So I think jobs they will require technical expertise in data management, data analytics, sensors, robotics, artificial intelligence, augmented reality. The needs for knowledge on those areas will increase, and we can think about those needs in 2 buckets. One of them is coming back to your initial question, the data scientists. So there will be, of course, an increasing, and we're seeing that already in the market, an increasing call for those types of positions. But not everybody will be data scientists, of course. But the other bucket, we need people that understand the technology, that can interact with the technology, that can use the technology. And so I think we will see an increasing need for that. And we also see management jobs placing a higher value on critical thinking, problem solving, creativity, and risk management. And I like to emphasize always when in my talks and my classes and when I'm writing about the subject, the creativity, the entrepreneurship, because you're going to hear me and I haven't surprisingly mentioned that word yet, but I always, and I think our entire team talks about reimagining how we do things. And in order for you to accomplish that, you really have to have critical thinking. You really have to have creativity. You really have to have this entrepreneurial spirit. And also the ability, the willingness the skill to manage risk. My technology skills will become ubiquitous. That's a bread and butter, basically.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. It's like you said, you have to have the appreciation for data and technology. You don't need to be a data scientist. You just have to appreciate it, understand it's out there, and then be creative thinking about it. Don't feel like you're handcuffed and you can't do anything. If you can appreciate what's out there and what you could possibly do, you can think critical about the stuff. You can try to be it's fun. I mean, it's not as boring as just like I push this button. Like you shouldn't be doing the work of a machine. That's why we have machines. Like you should be the human side of stuff. It should be very fun to be at work because you're thinking, you're on your toes, you're paying attention to stuff. I picked up on it in the book and I really enjoyed that. It was definitely a fun thing, as you can see with my energy and my big old smile coming across.
Absolutely. Actually, I don't even know if this would be an appropriate a metaphor to use, but we can think. I'm a pilot as well, so you can think about a pilot. So some pilots, we can think about the Air Force. Some pilots are engineers and they do design aircraft, but you don't have to be an engineer or design the aircraft in order to be able to use it and to make good use of it. You do have to have an understanding how the system works, the limitations, the capabilities, so you can leverage the platform to do what you need to do. But you don't necessarily have to have the technical know-how or ability to design the platform.
Oh, trust me, my younger brother is a pilot for the Air Force. You do not need to be technical at all.
There we go.
But he definitely knows how to use the platform, which is what makes so much sense. Another thing I really loved about your book was you guys gave action items for an organization. It's something that I kind of don't. You find a lot of just like case study, which you guys have great case studies, but you gave more of rolling up your sleeves and getting down into the getting to work. So how does a small to mid-sized enterprise start to incorporate some of the building blocks of DSN?
That's a great question. So I would say that at a high level, leaders can start by translating the business strategy components into a supply network digital capabilities, and then think about the required infrastructure. So that is at a higher level and for any organization. Now, leaders, they really needed the proper mindset to drive the necessary innovative culture. And again, as I mentioned before, when we're talking about digital supply network, we're talking about doing things differently, reimagining how we create and deliver value. So it's necessary. I was going to say it's important. It's really necessary to have this innovative culture. Now, leading teams and workers will need requires an understanding of the technological capabilities, as we mentioned before, to grasp the realm of the possibilities. So if you don't understand enough of the technology, you won't be able to envision how to deploy that technology to create value differently. So it's necessary some level of understanding. So with that, education, training, and the engagement of leaders and the workforce are crucial. So I think this is really a very important step in the process for any organization and for small and mid-sized companies mainly. And also it might some maybe smaller companies may have an advantage because there will be less layers between the vision and everybody else in the organization. But anyways, I think preparing the workforce, preparing the environment, preparing the culture to undergo this transformation, I think is a very important step, and that's why we call the whole enterprise a journey. Now, this aspect, training and education, it can lay down the foundations for what I'm calling a journey, and actually we call a journey in the book. So the journey really can start by engaging cross-functional teams to address internal pain points that affect the external customers, for instance. So a very important point here is we will have pain points in every aspect in regard of supply chains, or in the case of logistics and warehousing operations. But our focus here is we have so many resources and time available. So focusing on those pain points that actually affect the ultimate customer, I think that's a good place to start. And that would be an example. Now, another example would be to opportunities to address external customers' pain points. Maybe my customer is having some difficulties or some issues, and we see this a lot right now in COVID. And I might be able to solve that problem by leveraging some technologies. So that can get us started into the journey by focusing on one of those aspects. And in the book we mentioned many more, but I think those are some of the starting points that I think most of our listeners working on the field will recognize. And then we recommend considering the principles from design thinking and the use of experimentation and testing, but experimentation and testing focusing on learning. So, okay, it didn't work. There is a lesson there. And sometimes it will not work many times. I mean, of course, we're not talking about wasting resources. There is a whole approach to experimentation, but focusing on learning so we can rethink the ways that things are done and then how we create value, right? And then after that, the next step would involve integrating successful experiments into the broader processes, and then scaling and continuing learning and evolving. So I think that is, of course, in the book we go in more details, but I think those are the high-level steps that I would say an organization could use to get started. So start with the culture. Get the employee, all the leadership, all the workers involved. Get some training. We need to understand the limitations, the capabilities of the technology so we can understand the realm of the possible. And then pick pain points that affect your customer or that are opportunities for your organization to be ahead of the competition, and then start doing experiments and see what works and then scale.
It's funny. I hear a lot about like the SMEs have a good opportunity because they don't have those layers. They do have kind of a smaller, kind of more agile, can kind of go. They already sort of have some of the elements in there. But would you say the biggest factor is that culture? It's failing. So if you don't have the culture that wants a DSN, you're most likely it's gonna fail if you try to establish this in your supply chain.
Yes, absolutely. So there are many aspects that can contribute to failure, but so the culture is definitely one of them. So let me mention here the lack of enterprise-wide vision to unify the efforts. So culture would be involved on that. So this lack of an enterprise-wide vision, and we have seen this in the 80s when companies were trying to copy just in time, or in the 90s when many big companies, there are examples of companies that went bankrupt trying to implement ERP. So because of the lack of this enterprise-wide vision. So this issue can drive isolated investments in technology to merely follow trends, follow the market, or follow my competitor because my competitor is doing so, or focusing on just automating existing processes and operating models. And this is important because when we look at Amazon or we look at, and there are a plethora of examples out there, they are not doing things as we're used to see. They are doing things differently. So when we automate a process, we might be automating a bad process. So those are some of the tricks when we don't have this enterprise-wide view, and also this culture of experimentation, of this the culture that values innovation and that allows for risk taking. We're not talking about spending money and let's say that's not it. Of course not. It uh, ignoring this aspect overlooks the change management. And that there is a whole change management that goes into this whole enterprise. And this includes the need for a different managerial mindset, part of the code, a cultural change, and we're talking about culture a lot, and behavioral change, and training and reskilling. So I think the key to the success of a GSM lies in integrating a variety of information and combining emerging technologies to reimagine. So I mentioned this word before, and I cannot live without emphasizing reimagining operating models and drive customer value. Because it's also not just about doing things differently. It has to be about doing things differently to create value to the customer. So we see that the best examples of digital supply networks out there, they are relentlessly customer driven.
So let's give them a reimagination. I think the thing I really enjoy is helping people, like case studies, but also just hearing what their peers are going through. So I think one case study that you have in the book in particular that's really going to speak volumes to my audience and help them start to reimagine, and also grab the book, available in everywhere books are sold. But let's talk a little bit about the Maven machines and how Maven machines are reimagining fleet dispatch and management, because that's where most of my audience kind of lives. That's sort of what their day to day is. So, how did Maven reimagine what is possible within fleet dispatch?
Fantastic. So Maven Machine is an IoT startup located right here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where we are located, and they focus on the logistics and trucking industry, particularly the less than truckload segment. So this company is a startup that is reimagining carrier safety and driver compliance, and also is helping, is assisting partners struggling in transitioning that aspect of the supply chain towards digital supply network environment. So the trucking industry, and I think most of our audience who understand this example, faces an increasing push towards carrier safety and driver compliance. So, but then again, most of the procedures are outdated and supported by analog systems. So that's when Maven comes in. So one example that we provide in the book is regarding this case is about dispatchers, which traditionally they have managed operations and guided the drivers through CB radios or phones. So Maven developed various technologies to change this environment. For instance, they developed the world's first smart wireless headset for drivers, which provide real-time driver fatigue, distraction monitoring, and other capabilities. And they also developed a platform to handle complex information in fleet and dispatch management. So the platform, it gathers data on driver performance, on GPS, on telematics, vehicle and engine information, and they put all this together. The dispatch system it combines traditional dispatch with telematics and then other layers of information, connecting, as we mentioned in the very beginning, the difference between our traditional supply chain model and the GSN. So it connects these previously separated data sources and then presenting the information intuitively across the cloud. So it enables the users, the fleet managers, organizations, their customers to streamline their daily workflows and provides a real-time visibility from anywhere and of their entire workflow. So I think that is a very nice example of a company reimagining, moving from the traditional supply chain model to a more networked, to a digital supply network model.
And I know for a fact my audience is loving that word, visibility. That's all they want. They want to know, right? That's the big thing. You want to have visibility. You want to have that one single source of truth. So, Dr. Anita Ednilson Bernardes, thank you so much for joining me today. It was so much fun talking to you. Tell people how they can get in contact with you in particular, and then we'll tell them how to get the book and everything.
Oh, thank you so very much for having me. We're very excited about this this idea of supply networks, global supply chain networks, as I normally put this. They're responsible for our current lifestyle. I mean, it has contributed so much in so many regards. So we're very passionate about the field and about where the field can go. So thank you very much for the opportunity to talk a little bit about our work, and I can be contacted through email. So I have my contact information on the webpage of my school, so John Chambers College of Business and Economics, and I have my email there. I also have a webpage where I normally put I write small articles about aspects of the digital transformation. So the last one that I worked on was about how organizations can leverage this is a bad crisis, a very bad crisis that we're living in. There are many negative aspects about it. But how can we make this crisis not just about losses? How can we leverage this to do things better? And so that web page is called Supply Network Innovation, and I have my contact information there as well. And I'm available on LinkedIn. I have or Twitter, all those normal channels that we use these days.
Yeah, all the things we have to be on. So what I'll do is I'll include the links to your information in the show notes for this episode. So anyone listening or watching can go click right in there. It's right down below in the description. So it's awesome. In the meantime, Digital Supply Networks, it's out now. It's a great read. Definitely something worth getting, especially as we all kind of get pushed. Digital and making everything digital and kind of finding that way that you can make your operation more efficient, more effective, and ready for the future. This book helps so much. So I appreciate you coming on, spending the time with me today, and I hope everyone goes out and reads the book.
Thank you, Kyle. This was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Have a great day. And that's our show. Remember, you can pick up Digital Supply Networks right now wherever books are sold. And if you have picked it up, let us know what you thought about it. Tell us in the comments section. In the meantime, subscribe and share our show. Thanks for watching Consulting Logistics. I'm Kyle McNaught. Rock and roll.